Hello students, my name is Arshan and today we are going to do the second chapter of your class 7 science NCERT textbook. The name of the chapter is Nutrition in Animals. Now as you may recall that we have studied in our first chapter the nutrition in plants, their processes etc. We know that plants make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. But animals and some other plants are not able to make their own food. Hence, they are dependent on the plants for their food directly or indirectly. We may call the animals or plants directly dependent which eat plants, and we may call animals or plants are indirectly dependent which do not eat plants directly but are eating animals which eat plants. Hope this is getting clear. Now, the nutrient requirement of animals include the intake of nutrients, the mode of intake of nutrients and the processing or utilizing of those nutrients into the body. Some of the nutrients are carbohydrates, fibers, fats, proteins, maybe minerals. So students, all these components which I have listed or told you, these are very complex substances, and these complex substances cannot be absorbed or utilized by our body in such form. For this process to take place, these are required to be broken down into simpler substances which can be easily absorbed by our body. The process by which these complex substances are taken into our body and broken down into simpler substances resulting into the absorption of these in our body is known as digestion. You may refer to the figure where a complex substance is being broken down into simpler substance. You might have small baby infants in your home also. The mode of nutrition for them is drinking milk of their mother. Same goes for some other animals also. You might have also noticed some small fishes in ponds which scrape on the popcorn which you feed them or the small bits. So there are different modes of taking in nutrition also. Let us do this activity to understand more. Here you can see a table. In this table there is a list of animals. Write down your observation in the given table. You may find the list of modes of feeding mentioned in the examples. Some of the examples of the mode of feeding are scraping, chewing, brewing, capturing, swallowing, sucking, etc. Okay students, now we will learn something very interesting. The digestive system in us humans, that means you and me. Now how does we digest our food? What are the processes involved? What are the organs involved? And what are the processes in these organs? We will learn all about this in this segment. Now, we take our food by our mouth, we chew our food and then swallow it into our stomach. We absorb the nutrients from that food into our body and then we defecate the food. This whole process involves a lot of organs and a lot of systems. It starts from the buccal glands from our mouth to the anus. All this long passage contains different sorts of organs and parts. These parts are as follows. Kindly refer to the figure. The buccal cavity, food pipe or esophagus, stomach. Notice the small intestines. Now notice the large intestine covering small intestines. And the last part, the anus. All these parts constitutes alimentary canals, but our digestive system means alimentary canals plus the glands. You can notice the difference in the following picture. We can define the alimentary canals, which is as a continuous tube starting from the mouth to the anus, facilitating the digestion process, whereas we can define the digestive system including alimentary canal and the accessory organs and glands. What are the examples or the constituent parts of alimentary canals? Esophagus, small intestines, stomach, large intestines, anus, etc. Whereas in digestive systems, it is the salivary glands, liver, gallbladder and the alimentary canal. When the food passes through the alimentary canal, the secretive juices into our glands also act on that food. What does they do? They breaks down the complex food substances into the simpler ones so that they can be absorbed by our body. For example, liver secretes bile, Pancreas secretes other juices. Stomach and the mucus lining inside the stomach, they secretes hydrochloric acid so as to kill bacteria and to absorb the food easily. The process of digestion in us humans starts from our mouth. We take in the food into our mouth, chew it and then swallow it. The food goes into our stomach and then gets absorbed and we take in the nutrients from that food. The left out food is then defecated through the anus of our body. All this food processing and absorption involves a passage of food starting from the buccal cavity to the rectum anus of our body. What are these parts? Let us refer to these figures. The passage includes the buccal cavity, food pipe or the esophagus, stomach, small intestines covered by large intestines. Number 6, the anus. It is not a very long path, is it? These parts together constitute the alimentary canal. When the food is in the alimentary canal, it contains carbohydrates, fats and proteins. These carbohydrates, fats and proteins are required to be converted into simpler substances for better absorption. For this purpose, we require secretive juices which is contained by our stomach, small intestines, livers. The purpose of these juices is to break down complex substances into simpler ones. Now, all the alimentary canal organs plus these secretive juices including glands and organs constitute our digestive systems, whereas these options from the buccal cavity to the anus constitute the alimentary canal. For more clarity, you can refer to this figure. We can define the alimentary canal as a continuous tube from the mouth to the anus facilitating the digestion process, whereas we can define the digestive system as a complete system including the alimentary canal and the glands and organs. What are the parts included in the alimentary canal? From the buccal cavity, esophagus, stomach, etc., whereas all these parts plus the organs and the glands constitute the digestive system. Now let us talk about the buccal cavity. The food is taken into our body from our mouth. We take the food into our mouth and it is broken down and grinded by our teeth. Also, the salivary glands present in our mouth releases saliva, which results in the mixing of the saliva into our food and then we swallow it. This process of taking in of food by our mouth is known as the ingestion of food. Now students, you might have noticed that all the teeth in our mouth is not similar. They are not even same. We have different set of teeth in our mouth. They are namely incisors, canines, premolar and molar, and all these teeth have different functions. Let us do the following activity to learn more about the saliva and the effect of saliva on our food. We may already know that the saliva eases us into swallowing our food, but it also starts the breakdown of the food into our mouth itself. It starts converting the carbohydrates into simple sugars. Let us do the following activity to find out more. We will take two test tubes, label them A and B. In test tube A, we will put 1 teaspoonful of boiled rice. In test tube B, we will keep 1 teaspoon of boiled rice. After chewing it for 3 to 5 minutes, we will add 3 to 4 ml of water in both the test tubes. Now pour 2 to 3 drops of iodine solutions and we will observe. There will be a change in taste. So students, we have seen in this activity that in test tube A there was rice and rice contains starch. So when we put iodine solution into it, it changes the colors. Whereas the rice which was chewed by us, it contains saliva, and as we know, saliva converts the starch into sugars. As a result, when we put iodine solution into it, it doesn't change any color. Hence, we have established the functioning and the work of saliva. Students, we are talking about the buccal cavity. So how can we leave behind the strongest muscle in our mouth, that is our tongue? You might have noticed that the function of our tongue is to mix saliva and our food into our mouth so that we can swallow it easily. But there is also a very important function of our tongue. It contains taste bud. With the help of a tongue, you are able to taste the tasty food that your mommy cooks, whether it is salty, sweet, or spicy in flavors. That is all possible because of our tongue. Do you know, students, till 1822, we didn't knew how our stomach functions. We have never seen a stomach till that time. But a strange incident happened. A man named Alexis Saint Martin was badly hit by a shotgun. He was hit in the stomach. The doctor treating him, he was an American army doctor, William Beaumont. He treated him, tried to save the patients, but in actuality he wasn't able to close the hole properly. After some time, the patient starts to recover. That hole was still remaining. What doctor did? Dr. Beaumont starting seeing the functioning of the stomach from that hole. Isn't it very interesting? And hence we knew all these things from that incident till now. How does the stomach works? Where does the stomach opens? Where does the food go? Strange but very true. Now students, the food has travelled from the tunnel of esophagus or the food pipe into the stomach. What is the stomach? A stomach is an organ which is U-shaped, or you may call a flattened U. It is one of the most widest, or I may rather say it is the widest organ into the alimentary canal. The stomach consists of a mucus lining, secretive juices and also hydrochloric acid. The mucus protects the stomach and the vital organs from the hydrochloric acid secreted into it, and the hydrochloric acid kills all the bacteria that is present into the food. All this hydrochloric acid, secretive juices, it breaks down the proteins present into the food into simpler acids known as amino acids. Now students, the food from the stomach enters into the small intestines. You know, small intestines are 7.5 meter in length. That is almost the length of an elephant from the trunk to the tail. But we are fashioned in such a way that this small intestine is coiled into our body. This small intestine receives secretive juices from our liver and from pancreas and process the food. What is a liver, you may ask? A liver is a gland located at the upper right side of our body besides the stomach, which is reddish brown in color. It makes a secretive enzyme known as bile. Bile is then deposited and collected into an organ known as the gallbladder. The bile juice is responsible for the processing of fat. This further comes from the pancreatic juices also. The pancreatic juices are responsible for the breaking down of complex carbohydrates and proteins. These carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars which are absorbed easily. Proteins are broken down into amino acids and fats are broken down into glycerol or fatty acids. These can be absorbed by our body easily. Now students, the food has travelled from the tunnel of esophagus or the windpipe into the stomach. The stomach opens from the esophagus and ends or exits into the small intestines. The stomach is the widest organ in the alimentary canal. It consists of a mucus lining, hydrochloric acid and secretive juices. The purpose of the mucus lining is to protect stomach and other organs from the hydrochloric acid and the secretive juices. The purpose of the hydrochloric acid is to kill the bacteria that may be present into the food, and the secretive juices breaks down the complex proteins into simpler amino acids, as we already know that complex substances cannot be absorbed. It needs to be required to be broken down into simpler substances. We know students that from the stomach it exits into small intestines. Small intestine is coiled into our stomach. Now students, in this cream colored organ that we call small intestines, one another process takes place. When these food nutrients are broken down into simpler substances, absorption of them takes place. How does the absorption of them takes place and what is the process of absorption? It may be simply defined as the intake of nutrients which are broken down into simpler objects of our diet. The lower part of our small intestines has small finger-like projections known as villi, singular villus. These villus are finger-like projections for a reason. What is that reason? The reason is that these projections contains a network of thin blood vessels, and because of this shape of finger, the surface area of these villi are increased. As a result, they are more effective in absorbing the nutrients from the food. The nutrients which are absorbed by the villi are taken into the body through our blood and our blood vessels to different organs where it is needed. For example, the simple carbohydrates which are broken down into sugars are taken into cells, wherein the cells, with the help of oxygen, it is broken down and carbon dioxide and energy is released. Thus we gain energy. The broken down proteins which were now in the form of amino acids are taken to different organs where repairing and growth is required. This process is also called as assimilation. Now the food from small intestine is sent to large intestine. After absorbing all the nutrients, the large intestine takes the matter into its own hand. Definitely a figure of speech. The large intestine is wider and is 1.5 meter in length. What it does, it absorbs all the water and salt from the food. After all this absorbing of water and salt, it sends the material to the rectum into a semi-solid form. These semi-solid feces are then sent to the anus from time to time for defecation. This process of sending these feces to the anus is called as egestion. Now students, we will talk about digestion in grass-eating animals. Have you noticed different type of animals like cows and buffaloes? When they are standing, they are chewing. When they are sitting in their stables, they are chewing. What is this type of digestion? What happens actually is when they go out in the fields or outside, they eat grass. They swallow it very rapidly and they store that grass into a separate part of the stomach known as the rumen. In that rumen, that grass is partially digested and gets formed into curd. This curd is then later returned to the mouth from time to time into small lumps which they chew it and complete the digestion process. This process of taking food into the rumen, partially digesting it, then again chewing it is known as rumination. And the animals involved in this process are known as ruminants. Now what is the reason for this type of digestion in these grass-eating animals? As a matter of fact, grass contains cellulose. This cellulose is not very easily digestible. Even we humans cannot digest it. But these grass-eating animals have a separate part into their digestive system. This is present in between the small intestines and the large intestines. Into that part, there is a presence of a bacteria. That bacteria is responsible for the digestion of cellulose. As a result, these animals are very easily able to digest it. And we humans, not containing this bacteria, is not able to digest this grass. So far, we have learned about the digestive systems in humans and in animals. We have got a lot of idea about the different type of parts involved and the processes involved. But have you ever wondered what is the process involved in the digestion of a single-celled organism? How do they acquire food? How do they process it? Or how do they digest it? Let us find about that in this next segment. Now students, let us learn about feeding and digestion in amoeba. What is an amoeba, you may ask? Amoeba is a microscopic single-celled organism. It consists of a cell membrane, a thick nucleus and vacuoles. Kindly refer to the figure. You can clearly see food vacuole, nucleus and food particles also. Amoeba is constantly changing its shape and position. To get its food, it throws out a pseudopodia. What is a pseudopodia? As the name suggests, pseudo means false, podia means legs. Hence, it sends out false movements or false legs. With the help of those pseudopodia, it takes in the food. Its food is also microscopic single-celled organisms. It engulfs the food with the help of its pseudopodia and takes them into itself. It keeps its food into the vacuoles. These vacuoles consist of digestive juices. With the help of these digestive juices, the food of the amoeba is broken down into simpler substances, and these simpler substances is then absorbed by the body, whereas the waste part in the vacuoles is then thrown out by the amoeba. The process of digestion, term wise, is practically same in all living organisms. They take in food, they break it down for the energy, and then they throw the waste materials. So students, now we will conclude this chapter. We have learned a lot today. It includes animal requirements of nutrition, mode of its nutrition, and the utilization of these nutrients into the body. We have learned about the human digestive systems and the process involved, what is alimentary canal and what is digestive system. We have learned about the buccal cavity, we have learned about esophagus, stomach, large intestine and small intestines. We have learned different type of processes occurring in these parts. The processing of complex carbohydrates starts from the mouth itself where the salivary glands are. The processing of all these nutrients takes place in the small intestines with the help of bile secreted by the liver, pancreatic juices, which breaks down all these food nutrients into simpler parts. The food nutrients are then sent to the large intestine for absorption of salt and water, and the waste part is then sent to the rectum part. From the rectum, the waste is then time to time sent to anus for defecation. This is known as egestion. Digestion is a complex process involving of ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation and egestion. The grazing animals like cows, deers and buffaloes are known as ruminants because of a part present in their digestive system between their small and large intestines. The digestion of food in amoeba takes place with the help of pseudopodia. It takes in the food, engulf it and keep it in the vacuole, where it digests it with the secretive juices and then defecate the waste part. So students, next time when you talk or listen about the animals and their nutrition, I hope you have an idea of how the processes work.